In 2009, a sculptor from Dublin sold his house, moved his family to a remote peninsula in southwest Ireland, and bought 73 acres of land almost everyone else had written off. The hillside was being eaten alive, its trees stripped bare, its forest floors scraped to rock, its seedlings devoured before they could grow. He did not bring in machinery or plant thousands of trees. He did one simple thing. He built a fence. 15 years later, that hillside had become what scientists now call the single most ecologically diverse piece of land in all of Ireland. To make sense of what grew back, you have to start with what this island once was and what it became. When most people picture a rainforest, they think of the Amazon or the Congo, with heat, humidity, and towering canopies. Almost no one pictures Ireland, and yet, along the country's western coast, where the Atlantic Ocean pushes warm, wet air over the land year-round, the natural habitat is exactly that, a temperate rainforest. Mild, soaking wet, and dripping with life. These are the Celtic rainforests, also called Atlantic oakwoods. They are draped in mosses, ferns, lichens, and liverworts. Their branches grow gardens of their own, epiphytes that live on other plants, coating every limb in green. Sessile oak, downy birch, hazel, holly, and rowan form layered canopies above a forest floor that, in a healthy state, erupts with wildflowers from early spring to late summer. These rainforests are rarer than tropical ones, and globally, they are among the most threatened habitats on Earth. Ireland was once almost entirely covered by them. Before humans arrived, an estimated 80% of the island was woodland. The Atlantic rainforest, in the words of one Rewilder, is the natural habitat of most of this island. It is what Ireland wants to be. Today, that figure has collapsed to around 1%. Ireland now has one of the lowest levels of native forest cover in all of Europe. And here lies one of the great deceptions about the Emerald Isle. Ireland is famous worldwide for being green, but that green is overwhelmingly the green of intensively grazed farm grassland and plantations of imported conifers. Total forest cover in Ireland is reported at around 11%, but the overwhelming majority of that is not forest in any meaningful ecological sense. It is dense, regimented plantation of non-native Sitka spruce, planted in rows as a timber investment, supporting almost none of the wildlife a native woodland does. The native, living rainforest, the real thing, accounts for barely 1% of the land. Dalton is blunt about the difference between a true forest and a spruce plantation. They are, he says, entirely different entities, and the contrast has to be experienced in person to be believed. Ecologically, the country is, in the blunt words of the man at the center of this story, thrashed. In one international ranking of biodiversity intactness, Ireland placed 13th from the bottom out of 240 nations. 63% of its bird species are of conservation concern. 90% of its protected habitats are in bad and worsening condition. The rainforest had not just shrunk, the few fragments that survived were dying. The man who decided to fight that decline on his own small patch of ground was not a scientist or a forester. His name is Owen Dalton, and he was a sculptor. Born and raised in Dublin, Dalton had spent years in Italy training in the painstaking craft of stone and sculpture conservation, the art of restoring damaged historic artworks. In his 20s, he had bought a ruined 1750s house in Dublin and lovingly restored it. He understood, in his hands and his bones, the slow work of bringing something broken back to life. On a family holiday to the Beara Peninsula in West Cork in 2009, he found a farm clinging to a hillside above the Atlantic, in a townland called Buffikil. The family who had lived there, the Crowleys, had mostly emigrated to the United States in the early 20th century, leaving the land largely unfarmed for around 100 years. In that century of neglect, wild native rainforest had crept back across much of the 73 acres. Dalton described his reaction in a single phrase: love at first sight. Within seconds, he knew it was where he wanted to spend the rest of his life. Buying it for the price of a small Dublin house, he said, felt like a heist. But when he looked closely at his new wonderland, he saw that something was deeply wrong. The forest was being destroyed from the ground up. Dalton described the forest floor as looking as though an army equipped with petrol-driven streamers was constantly moving through it, obliterating all vegetation below head height. The rich carpet of wildflowers and ferns that should have covered the ground was gone, scraped down to bare rock and moss. There were two culprits, and both were animals that did not belong there. Feral goats and non-native Sika deer roamed the hillside in large numbers, and they ate everything. Every native tree seedling that dared to sprout was browsed off before it could establish. The animals had carved a visible browse line across the trees, eating every leaf they could reach. They stripped the bark from older trees, killing them outright. With no young trees able to replace the old ones, the forest had no future. It was a woodland of aging survivors with no next generation, and the overgrazing opened the door to a second killer. With the native ground flora eaten away and bare soil exposed, an invasive shrub moved in, Rhododendron ponticum. To most people, it is a pretty garden plant with purple flowers. To an Irish rainforest, Dalton calls it a death sentence. Rhododendron grows in dense, light-blocking thickets that shade out everything beneath them. Nothing, no seedling, no wildflower, no fern, can survive under it. Its leaves are toxic, and it can poison the soil for years even after it is removed. It was strangling the forest that the grazers had not already stripped. This was not unique to Buffikil. The exact same forces were, and still are, destroying Ireland's most precious woodlands. Dalton is scathing about Killarney National Park, the country's most extensive surviving rainforest, which he describes as a dying ecosystem being killed by the very same things, collapsing fences letting in deer and sheep, and vast invasions of rhododendron. The forest was dying everywhere. Dalton decided that on his 73 acres, at least, it would not. His solution was almost embarrassingly simple, and it cost a fraction of what most restoration projects spend. First, the fence. Dalton applied for and received a state grant to erect deer and goat-proof fencing around the land, sealing the grazing animals out and turning his hillside into what he called an ecological island. The logic was the same one that has driven rewilding from Scotland to Arizona. If you remove the thing that is eating the forest can finally grow. Second, the rhododendron. This was the hard part, and there was no shortcut. Working in his spare time, year after year, Dalton set about eliminating the invasive shrub by hand and with carefully applied treatment, cutting the dense stands, treating the stumps to stop regrowth, and returning again and again to catch every seedling that tried to come back. It was slow, relentless, physical labor, the conservation equivalent of the painstaking restoration work he had done on stone, but it cleared the light and the ground that the native forest needed. And then, for the most part, he stepped back. He did not try to engineer the recovery. He let the land do the work. As he put it, his job was simply to remove the human-caused impediments preventing wild nature from coming back, and then get out of the way. What happened next did not look real. The recovery came at wildly different speeds across the land. In some spots, a scatter of seedlings took years to appear, but in others, Dalton described a rapid and radical transformation that started the instant the grazing stopped. Where there had been nothing but bare grass and rock, the ground was soon thronged with mushrooming young trees. In some areas, within just 6 or 7 years, the canopy had closed in overhead at a height of 4 to 5 meters. A bare hillside had become a young forest in less time than it takes a child to reach school age. Seedlings of oak, birch, holly, ash, rowan, willow, and hazel popped up everywhere, growing into new forest where previously there had been only barren grass. And critically, it was not just the trees. The entire ecosystem followed them back. Scores of species of native wildflowers began to carpet the woodland floor from early spring to late summer. self-heal, herb robert, dog violet, wood sorrel, St. Patrick's cabbage. With the flowers came an explosion of pollinating insects. With the insects came the birds. The place, Dalton said, now rings with bird song. The forest floor that had once been scraped to bare rock was now layered with ferns, mosses, and liverworts again. The branches grew their hanging gardens of epiphytes. The full, dripping, impossibly green complexity of a true Atlantic rainforest reassembled itself, not because anyone planted it, but because it had been waiting in the soil and the surviving trees all along, held back only by the mouths of the grazers and the shade of the rhododendron. As the forest rebuilt itself, the animals came looking for it. The returning abundance of plants and insects rippled up the food chain, and rare, protected mammals began to move in. Pine martens, a cat-sized member of the weasel family that was once driven to the brink in Ireland, took up residence or passed through. Otters appeared, drawn by the richer streams and the increased life. And most remarkably, lesser horseshoe bats, one of Europe's most threatened bat species, found their way to the regenerating woodland, drawn in by the surging numbers of flying insects. Dalton's 73 acres became a magnet for biodiversity in a country that had been hemorrhaging it for centuries. The Irish Times described his land as likely the most ecologically diverse parcel of natural land in the entire country. A single sculptor, working in his spare time with a fence and a pair of loppers, had created the richest patch of nature in Ireland. There was one more detail that captured everything. Dalton observed that native Irish rainforest, in a healthy state, does not actually burn. As wildfires increasingly scorch Ireland's overgrazed, desiccated uplands, his living, water-soaked forest stands as a fireproof island of green. It is proof that a healthy ecosystem is not just more beautiful, but more resilient. Dalton never intended his hillside to be only a private paradise. He wrote a book about it, An Irish Atlantic Rainforest, which won the Post-Irish Book Award and turned a quiet rewilding project into a national conversation. He then spent 2 years traveling the length of Ireland, photographing its last surviving rainforest fragments, documenting both their staggering beauty and, in almost every case, their slow death by grazing and rhododendron. His message is pointed but hopeful. He believes Ireland is covered in dormant rainforest, lying in wait beneath the bald, grazed hills, needing only the chance to grow. He hopes his barer forest will act like a pebble thrown into a pool, rippling awareness outward. But he is careful never to blame farmers, many of whom are his neighbors and friends. The problem, he argues, is a system that gives farmers no financial choice but to keep every acre grazed bare. Real change, he says, has to come at the policy level, paying farmers to protect and restore natural habitats rather than to destroy them. Today, Owen Dalton's hillside on the Beara Peninsula is a true Atlantic rainforest once more. Where feral goats once carved bare lines across dying trees, oak and birch saplings now grow thick beneath a closing canopy. Where rhododendron once cast its poisonous shade, wildflowers bloom from spring to autumn. Pine martens hunt through the branches. Bats hawk for insects at dusk. The streams run clear. And the whole place drips and breathes and rings with a density of life that, just 15 years ago, had been all but extinguished. What happened at Buffikil carries a meaning far larger than one farm. Start with humility. Dalton did not build this forest. He could not have. No one can manufacture the staggering complexity of a temperate rainforest, the precise relationships between oak and fungus, insect and flower, bat and beetle. All he did was take away the two things that were killing it, and then trust the land. Nature held all the knowledge. It just needed permission. Then there is the harder truth, the one that carries both warning and hope. Ireland is one of the most ecologically depleted countries on Earth. Its rainforests reduced to 1% of the land, its remaining fragments dying as we watch. That is the tragedy, but Buffikil is the answer to it. It proves that the recovery is not slow, not impossible, and not expensive. A single person with a fence reversed a century of decline in 15 years. Multiply that by a nation, and an entire lost landscape could come roaring back to life. A sculptor spent his career bringing broken works of art back to life. Then he found his greatest restoration in a dying hillside above the Atlantic and discovered that the most beautiful thing he could make was the thing he didn't make at all. Take away the mouths and the shade, give the land back its quiet, and a forest that looked dead will return on its own, wilder, richer, and more alive than anything a human hand could ever design.